antennas, they came in today. The connectors from the antennas may take 2 to 3 weeks to get because nobody in the States have got them and they're going to have to ship them from overseas. So little things like that are what's going to slow us down and getting back on the air FM. Now, one of the things we've been doing, we've been hearing from other stations and they're saying, well, let us know what connectors you need because we may have some in reserve, and then just swap them out with us. So we're getting a great outpouring from other stations in order to come back up again.
How much harder is it to do when you're a smaller station like we are? How much harder is it to count on, or not harder maybe, but what's it feel like to be able to have the connections now and be able to have that assistance from other organizations?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. You know, we go through a lot we put in a lot of hours to make the station work, you know, the core group. And we've got some show hosts that are in their 400th show now. I mean, you've got a huge number of shows under your belt.
Right.
So it shows the dedication that our people have to become a community radio station. And we've accomplished that. But it took us a long time to get to that critical mass where all the pieces are connected now. The response we're getting from the community, from other organizations that we've helped in the past, other radio stations that have heard about it. I mean, we got a call from a station that said, I read it in the paper on the internet that you guys are having a problem. Is there anything we can ship you now that can help you with, that we can loan you? And so we're looking at all those pieces and saying, yeah, we could use this and we can use that, and they'll send them to us. That's unheard of, you know, for a little station like us to be able to do that.
So our listening audience today, if they were wanting to donate, whether it be funds or time, how would they do that?
For funds, the easiest thing to do is just go to kdwradio.com, click on the donate button. A $5 donation is a big deal here. You know, it's the adding up of all those little donations that's going to get us to the place where we can buy what we need to get back on the air and replenish the reserves that we need to survive anything that goes on in the future.
What does it mean, or what feedback have you had from the community now about the station? For so many years, and we've talked about this stuff before, and so I'm kind of teeing this up for you to run with it, but you know, when it comes down to it, I've done enough shows, you're right, and I go to some of these events, and some of the events I can't go to, and they're still calling, begging me to come out and do, you know, live. And what is that? I get goosebumps even thinking about it, because you know me, and you know where I started. I never pictured this when I sat in your office and talked about actually having a show. So what's it mean to you, though? You've got lots more time and energy into all of this than most of us.
I can't tell you what a big deal it is. I mean, it's just so gratifying. You know, the emails and the phone calls, and you know, just people expressing their support. And you know, there's some people in our group, you know, that don't have 2 nickels to rub together, and they've written checks because they want their station to stay on the air.
Right.
They want to keep going. It makes it all worthwhile, John. For the longest time, radio stations didn't get feedback. You know, they didn't get a sense of what the impact is in the community. And, you know, and sometimes we get it anecdotally here where there was just this big flower show in Arcadia. And the woman called us back after we did the PSA for it. She said, I can't believe how many people came to our flower show and said they heard it on the radio in Northport. They went all the way out to Arcadia to go see this big flower show.
Fantastic.
So we know that we have that impact, but we don't normally get that feedback. Now, because we have trouble, because you know, we're in a bad strait over this, to hear the community response to it, people calling up and saying, how can I help? And I think that's wonderful.
And you know, we've got something coming up in November, which is Giving Tuesday. So you know, Marie and I have actually been talking about the event in November. Think about that, folks. We weren't into August yet when I was having the conversation with Marie about how we can step our game up just another notch for Giving Tuesday. But we help a lot of different organizations, not just the community, but organizations that are within our community. And I know the feedback we get there because just walking through the young professionals back to school bash and talking to some of the vendors that were there that participate in Giving Tuesday, they're really like honed in on whatever we want to do as a station. We've built an army of people out there, and that's what I have to consider them to be. It's the KDW Army that's out there, and I don't know what we would do without the station now, and I don't know that you could have said that when you started it.
No, definitely not. We never really looked at the idea that this was supposed to be a traditional radio station where we play music or we have talk shows. It was always supposed to be a community service organization. And now that I'm learning how to write grants, and I've been fairly successful in getting grants, I'm learning that the presentation we made is, look, we are a community service organization. We happen to own a radio station. We happen to own a performance hall. We happen to do Giving Tuesday and Giving Challenge, where we bring all the nonprofits in. We got another project that we're just starting with Karen Andrews, the puppeteer, and Miriam Lamb, who is an expert in autism. We're going to be creating a project called the Tinker's Emporium. In fact, Pete O'Shea is going to be the tinker.
Awesome.
And so we're excited about that. What it's going to be is there'll be 5 categories. There'll be 5-minute videos in each one of those categories, and they'll be based on a Sesame Street style goth kind of shop where they're going to teach autistic children certain life skills under each category. We're doing that underneath the umbrella of our Community Broadband Radio Association. One, because we have the talent, we have the space, we have the equipment. So why not put that stuff to use, creating other things that are valuable to the community?
So we've advanced though. We've gone somewhere where you did not project, and a lot of companies have now done the same thing. But with radio, I don't know that you ever envisioned live on Facebook, YouTube, no. Twitter.
Well, when we did this 12 years ago, those things didn't exist.
So,
in fact, broadband radio, where we started, was in its infancy. People didn't know how to do it. You would get onto a radio station, and if 10 more people wanted to get on, you got bumped off. So you couldn't listen anymore. We solved all those issues.
So, it's funny. We're reaching people now that we never projected to reach.
Correct.
And it's funny because it really hasn't changed, because you're reaching people 12 years ago that you didn't know if you were going to reach them.
We looked at the IP addresses a couple of weeks ago as we were doing our grant writing and seeing what kind of impact. We got no way counting FM, so we have no idea how many FM listeners there are. We never will.
Right.
But we know how many internet listeners there are to a point. We've gone from, just in 3 months, from about 8,000 on the average to about 20,000 on the average every hour. That's 20,000 IP addresses from all over the world listening to this little radio station. And we know that the listeners that are listening to a particular show may not listen to the next show, but those numbers don't really fall off. The IP address not change, but the numbers stay up, which is kind of exciting. Well, that's just on the internet side.
And is it nice to see that consistency?
Yes.
There
was a time when we had that roller coaster during the course of the day, and that has now changed, that it doesn't vary by, say, more than 5,000 IP addresses in any one direction. And we're seeing some of those numbers at night. There's some shows at 2 o'clock in the morning that are doing 7,000, 8,000 IP addresses. So.
That's fantastic. Just listen. I know when I started, and I don't even know the date anymore that I started. I'm just.
Nor do I.
I just get up and every day I talk to people about not just real estate in Northport, Port Charlotte, and everything that's happening around us. But I was at the park today with my granddaughters. I had lunch with my son, who's down from Ohio, and I said, I gotta go do my show. And my goal was to be here at 2:45, and of course I didn't do that, but I rolled in at 5 till. And it's the dedication Um, and it's not just dedication from the live show hosts, because I want you to talk about the people who do pre-recorded shows and how much time and energy that they put in to make the perfect show that they have in mind.
Well, about 8 out of 10 shows here are pre-recorded.
Right.
And you got somebody like Kim Galloway who does Facets. And Facets is a 2-hour program. She does it every week. She's picking music that you've never heard of before, so that's an effort, to get the side B stuff. She's at almost 500 shows now, and she's done this every week, and she is not the exception. We've got other people. Jax Resto's been doing radio theater, and Jax has been doing that since almost the beginning of this station 10 years ago. So we've got people that are just pumping out shows. Joe Moreo, not only the program manager, he's Joe the Oldies guy, pumping out 2 shows every week. So,
and he spends a lot of time setting all that stuff up, though.
Yeah, this stuff isn't easy to do. I mean, an hour show probably takes you 4 or 5 hours to put together, and get it up. And then again, we're a fully automated station, so it makes it easy. They don't have to come in.
Right.
They upload it, and the software deals with it.
So I gotta give a shout out to my buddy Chuck English. Thank you for the birthday wishes. I appreciate that. Today is the big 59.
Yes, we're going to sing to John.
Oh yeah, woohoo! All 2 of us. But I woke up this morning. I'll tell you, I woke up this morning and I took care of work, and I walked out, and my family basically is sleeping on the couch, the fold-out couch in the living room. They had a friend of theirs down, so she's in the other room. But I walk out, and I've got this huge balloon rack hanging from my TV, and it's this big balloon arch, and then big balloons on my sliding glass window that said "Happy Birthday." And a 1.5-year-old, Abby T, she walks over, and as soon as I open the door, "Happy birthday, Big John!"
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "There we go."
Yeah.
And as soon as Ellie got up, she did the same thing, and we were off to the races after that. So I want to thank everybody for thinking about me on Facebook and everything else. I appreciate it, but it doesn't mean anything, because to me, every day is kind of special to be on the radio show. And people like Chuck, I knew of Chuck, but I didn't know Chuck. I didn't sit down and have coffee with Chuck until I did the radio show.
Well, I tell you, John, this was never the intent in the beginning when Larry and Green and I were working on putting this together. We never intended it to be a family. We intended it to be a community service, but we evolved over time into a big family where people have made friendships through the station. With COVID, there were people who got sick, and other show hosts and volunteers went and helped out. Everybody's checking on everybody. And we're seeing that in the community too. We consider all of our listeners part of our family, part of the KDW radio family. And we've learned, people will come to us with a problem or with a request, or can you help us with this? And we're always ready to respond. And now, John, we're seeing the reverse. We need help, and people are stepping up and they're helping us to get through this time.
So I'm going to step in again and say, give our information out, because if people want to donate anything from $5 on up, we're more than happy to take that, right?
KDWradio.com and click on the donate button. Made it real easy. And the other nice thing is PayPal is not taking their big. When we let PayPal know why we were doing this, they decided not to charge us the interest rate. So if you give us $10, we get $10.
Fantastic. And we as a station, I have to throw bunches of kudos out, because I was talking to my son about what you do behind the scenes with the grant writing and keeping things, driving forward. We very rarely have a show where we ask for money.
That's true. And I think that was also an evolving philosophy. When we first started, we thought that people would pay to be members. And that wasn't a viable option. We tried, we worked at it a little bit, worked, mostly it didn't. Then we looked at sponsorships. And that was around the time the money was getting really tight for everybody. And so that really didn't work. But what we found was grant writing was the way to go. That's what's made the difference with us, is being able to write grants. And that's only in the last couple of years. Otherwise, it was out of my pocket and other close friends that said, yeah, we want to keep your station going. So fortunately, I don't have to do that anymore.
So I'm gonna throw this at you for a second, and I want you to talk about another 3 or 4 shows that we have on the air, so that people in my listening audience understand the variety that we have. So you talked about Joe. Let's maybe talk about Marie and some of the other.
Marie and CJ, 2 great talk shows. I mean, they're doing some amazing stuff. We have Jaha Cummings, who is a commissioner in Northport.
Fantastic.
He's doing some fantastic shows. We got Dominic Cretacci doing Listen to the Music, which is a wonderful music show filled with history and little quips about what's going on in the song and things like that. Go to the KDW radio and pull up the schedule. You can also look and read about the individual show hosts too. They've got some interesting bios to look at.
Just don't look at mine. Mine's not that interesting.
Well, it's there.
It's there.
But so there's basically everything, because the idea of a community radio station, that was one of the core foundations, is everybody needs to have a voice. And so we have every kind of music you can think of. We got a German show. We got a Spanish show coming online now.
Didn't we have Russian too?
We have a Russian show that's been airing for the last 5 or 6 years. And for some reason that show doesn't come on. We get calls on the phone. Where's our show? When's it coming on?
Well, we have a huge diverse listening audience, but we also have a huge diverse city.
We're Northport. If you want to know about Northport, you can go on this radio station and listen for the course of a couple of days, and you're going to hear just about everything that goes on in Northport. John, we have city commissioners who come on the radio station.
Right.
We have a city commissioner who's on our board, Jill Luke. And so that type of interaction with the city, the stuff you do with Laura Ansell, and what other radio station on the planet is interviewing solid waste? Nobody. I mean, nobody, but we learn a lot from those guys.
We actually learn that we're actually number 1 at what we do at that.
Yeah.
And we actually make money back for the city and the taxpayers. And here's a number. I don't know if you listened to the show the other day, but a trash truck costs as much as we get in our reimbursement check. So basically, because our city is dedicated to doing recycling the right way, we can actually pay for a trash truck cash. Now think about that. That's huge when it comes right down to it. And a trash truck runs about $450,000. Did not know that. I knew it was high, but to know that we could actually just do our recycling and buy a truck because we recycled our trash the right way. There's so much to learn about how the money gets kind of jockeyed. Unless you dig in to your community and have people like our recycling department on and our public works department, you don't understand the facts.
No, and we have great support from our newspapers. But a newspaper is limited to column inches. There's only so much they can tell you when they have to do a story or when they want to do a story. With us, you got an hour. And worst case, you got 23 minutes. And there's a lot that you can do in that time. And we've seen that with political issues. We saw it with the Charter Review. We saw it with a number of other things where our commissioners and our city managers and stuff came on the air and they explained to people what's going on. And things reversed from, the rumors that were being swelled around about certain things. And that's, I think, really powerful that we have that reach and we can get that information out to the public.
Have we hit your goal? Have you moved, did you move the goalpost?
I was just going to tell you, the goalpost is constantly moving because we're looking at okay, we did that. What can we do now? Oh, wow. Do you think we can do that? Yeah. And all of a sudden we start progressing in that direction.
Right.
There's a couple of things, like I said, we're doing the Tinker's Emporium. That's going to be a lot of fun. We've just opened up a website called lpfmmedia.com. And the purpose is to sell shows to other community stations. we're a rarity. We have 72 volunteers, 46 of them are show hosts. We're constantly generating great content. Everything from Fish and Frank,
Yep.
right down the line to everybody else, to music shows like Dominic and Music. Great coup, Dominic and Kenny interviewed Hartley Peavy, who's never given an interview on radio or television. Peavy guitars and Peavy amps. They got him on for almost 2 hours talking, and they broke it up into life story segments. So we're doing some great stuff with content. So anyway, we're going to be able to sell this content to other community stations, and not to make ridiculous profit. It's enough to keep them on the air. They pay $25 for a show. They get a $50 sponsor. They've made money in the game, because nobody wants to support a jukebox.
Well, and I'm going to kind of point this out too, that the time and energy that it takes to run these shows and do all these things. Are we inspiring other community radio stations to look at how we're doing things?
I hope so. One of Brian's dreams was to codify everything that we're doing, get it into a big book called How to Run a Community Radio Station for Dummies. And we are actually working that direction. Joe and Jill and Kim Galloway have been codifying how we do all the things that we do here. And I think, at some point we're going to have the ability to hand you a package and say, you want to be a community radio station. Not that we know it all, but this is what we've learned in the process of bouncing off the wall a few times.
So the beauty in that is whoever kind of steps in and wants to up the game a little bit has what we never had.
Yeah.
Which is a start.
Start with, we started from a bunch of guys who knew nothing at all about radio.
Right.
And to where we are today is that, we're considered one of the top community radio stations in the country. And that's against NPR stations also. I mean, we're fully automated. We have tons of programming. We have got great community outreach. We're an ABC News affiliate. I mean, there's no other community radio station that we know of that's a major news affiliate, because they won't sell that stuff to small stations. They want you to be a big station. We just happened, Bob Melman, God rest his soul, came in here one day. He was the former president of the American Broadcasting Corporation. And he said, why don't you guys have the news? And we said, because they won't talk to us, Mr. Whoever you are. He said, well, I'll fix that. And he gets on the phone, he's talking to somebody, and he hands me the cell phone. It's Mary McCarthy from ABC News. She doesn't say, hi, RJ, how you doing? She says, where do I send the contract? So, there's been a lot of serendipitous stuff that has happened. But, here we are, we're an ABC News affiliate, and every hour we pump out the news from ABC. And now we've started our own daily news program. They're still in the development stages. They're doing it 3 days a week, but it's just local news.
Are you still stepping in and doing some shows like you do?
I do the Fish and Frank show. I love that show.
Nice.
Frank and I have a grand old time doing that. And I do that show, the Crazy Show with Dave Krieger. We're conspiracy theory central.
Nice.
Dave is the conspiracy theorist, and I am the great doubter. So we have a good time. One of the things that Joe and I that we taught, with Dave Krieger and I have taught our audience, is two people can have diametrically opposed opinions on things, but they can get along and they can have a respectful conversation about what they know and what they believe. And you've kind of seen me evolve a little bit more towards Dave, and Dave calming down a little bit more from the crazy stuff. And it works, and that's a microcosm of how a community works.
So let's kind of talk about that for a minute, because we are based in our community and we are focused on our community. How do we get people to settle in and kind of talk to each other? And I try to do that on my show, which is having different types of topics. I mean, we have rape and prevention, we have public works. I've had the police department on talking about speed traps and how to avoid getting in trouble. And, there's a diverse conversation that's to be had out there. But, when it comes down to people, we do count on people.
We do. And if you go back to our simian brain, our monkey brain, we do follow by example. If we see something or we hear something, we tend to emulate it. And what's happening on the radio is you're hearing people be respectful. You're hearing people be analytical.
Yep.
You're not hearing people do sound bites. You're not hearing people jump to conclusions. You're not hearing people make it up as they go along. They're being respectful. They're being thoughtful. You know, we've got Democratic shows. We've got Republican shows. And they've actually talked about having shows together, which I think is amazing. We've got a show on the Constitution where two opposing sides will get together and they'll talk about how they interpret the Constitution. As we see that, as the public sees that, you understand that these things are possible. And so you take that imitation and you use it in your life.
So I'm gonna kind of take the lead on for the station is being a leader in kind of the rebuilding, because we as Americans have kind of been split on party lines on almost every
Party lines, ethnic lines, race lines, sexual preference lines, vaccination lines. We've been split apart as a public. And what you see
with design.
Maybe not. I don't know Dave Krieger, but it's happening. I mean, you can't doubt that this hasn't happened to us.
Right.
How do we put it back in our own small way at this station? We're beginning to show you how to do it. You know, my vast experience is as a mediator and negotiator. I was in Ireland during the Troubles working on projects, so I know how bad it can get. But I also know that it can get fixed. And it starts on the community level. It doesn't start on a national level. It's not going to come out of Washington. It's going to come out of Northport.
Yep.
And it's going to come out of cities in Northport and little communities and things where people figure out that we're all in this boat together.
Yep.
And we've got to work together. We don't have to agree, but we do have to respect each other and care for each other. And that's what makes the difference. And I think that's the pervading philosophy on the station.
You know, here's something funny. I don't care what ethnic background you have. You put 4 guys, 5 if you want to throw in the Coast Guard too.
Mm-hmm.
But you throw all of the representation from armed forces into a conversation. You can mix the whole ethnic background into that. There's something you learn early. They're all our brothers and sisters. We got each other's back, but we're absolutely going to pick on each other.
That's right. Marines eat crayons.
Yeah.
I've heard that. Yeah.
So it's one of those things. You know, I was Air Force and everybody mocks me for it, but we're just smarter than the rest of them.
Well, I guess.
Yeah, that's what they tell us. You know, because you have to pass a different test.
Right.
But you know, at the end of the day, it's fun. It's just life. It's supposed to be that way. If we could all take a dose of medicine and just say, stop looking at skin, stop looking at some behaviors, and just realize there are people on the other side.
Again, the core issue is we're all in this together. And we're going to be in this together. And there's no way to get out of it. We're in it together. So what are we going to do to make it palatable for everybody? What are we going to do to make it so it works for everybody without having to take away somebody's ability to live or enjoy their community?
So the reason I went there is an easy road back for me, because when I started as a show host, do you remember what you said?
I barely remember your name.
I know, but it was really a kind of enlightening for somebody who's never done a show. That you can take the show wherever you want to go. There is really no limitation. Just keep it respectful.
Well, that was the corral theory that we came up with. As long as you stay in the corral and you don't get me in trouble,
right?
I'm not going to tell you how to do your show. We're not going to give you a formula, because we don't want it to sound like every other radio show on the planet. And that has worked beautifully. mm, none of our shows follow a standard format. It is the creative force and energy of that show host. And I think that's one of the reasons that the show hosts are so dedicated and they've done this stuff with them. We have very little turnover in show hosts.
And I'll say this, I've had open dialogue with a lot of our show hosts. We've done a lot of Giving Tuesdays and all different kinds of fundraisers that we do here for other organizations. I've been to Wednesday nights and music and open mic and listened to that, and really appreciate that online, and listening in and throwing comments in. It's that people just need to maybe sometimes drop their guard and realize that all good ideas are good ideas, but greatness is when you can put good ideas together with a neutral mindset and just run with it. And sometimes you have to give and take. And I'm wondering, have you ever, as you started this whole thing, have you ever had to give and take?
Oh, all the time. Especially in the beginning, we had to do a lot of giving, and there wasn't a whole lot of taking going on. But we pretty much knew that we could do this, that it could happen. Unfortunately, we lost Larry and Brian early to illnesses, but they did lay the philosophical foundation that guides me every day. This is a hard road in some ways because people aren't used to this, but we're finding over time they're getting used to it and they like it, and they're responding to it. So it's not stuff that happens overnight, John. You can't just say, "Oh, we're all going to get together today." But again, back to that monkey brain thing, we see something, and if we see it enough times, we start to emulate it, and that's what's going on with the station and how it's affecting our community.
Well, on a personal note, I know for a fact that I've had, when I first started, I had people out there that didn't know who I was, didn't know what I stood for. And I try not to really interject one way or another on a show. But I'll be honest with somebody. If I got to ask a question, I'll just answer it.
Mm-hmm.
It's never in a derogatory way, but I've seen people change now, because people who were just throwing their hands in the air before are actually messaging me and asking me to get this show on or do this or try to get this guest on. And you're right. That right there tells me that the conversations that we're having may be dampering down some of the tension that everybody has in daily life.
Right, and I think the conversations are creating new ideas. I've seen a couple of shows where people get on and they're discussing an issue, and all of a sudden they come up with a new idea, and then they run with that new idea, which I think is incredible when you see it actually get birthed on the radio as they're sitting here in Studio A and they're talking, well, we could call it this instead of calling it that, and Zoom, it takes off.
Right.
That's also part of the process that then goes on in the community, where people will talk about something instead of throwing rocks at each other and talk about it. Well, if you would do this, I could do that. Well, I could do that if you're willing to do that. And it works out. It comes, same thing that I saw in Ireland in community disputes. If you got them talking, and you got them talking without fighting talking, respectful speech, they would always, and I'm talking 100% of the time, come up with a solution. It may not be the best solution, but it'd be better than the position they were in prior to coming up with something.
I want to think that manageable positions.
Yes, manageable positions.
Honestly, manageable positions, because and I've said this now, I think for over a year, I've been saying that I think there's one word that has been taken out of the dictionary, and I'm not just talking local. I'm talking all the way up the ladder, and I'm talking even with friends. The word compromise seems to be a word that a lot of people have forgotten. That you do things because you compromise. You get things accomplished because you compromise. Here at the station, I know we've talked about different things where you've had to compromise and do different things and manage how many different talents, okay, and egos, whether it's huge ego or not a huge ego, and try to build them up. And like me, when I first started, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue. But we talked in the office, and if we didn't have that open dialogue and I just run in and try to do a show, I don't know that it would have been as successful.
Yeah, probably not. It does take that give and take. Somebody asked me once, what's it like managing 72 volunteers? I said, it's like herding rabbits on steroids on a good day.
Right.
But it's doable. It can be done, and you have to keep that exchange going between people. Not only between me as the station manager and you as the show host, but like you say, between you and other show hosts, because ideas percolate and get birthed in that process. And again, that's what it's all about. And again, we are a microcosm of our community. We are a representative of what this Northport community is all about. And we kind of are where the Northport community can go if it wants to go. There's quite a bit of animosity out there now with the next election coming up, and some very divisive individuals that are involved in it. That's tough because that tears communities apart, and that makes people feel bad, and that makes people get angry and want revenge. And sometimes revenge completely overwhelms your logic that, yeah, if I do that, I'm going to get in trouble, but I don't care, kind of thing. That's where we can come in and help to mitigate some of that by getting those ideas percolated out into the community instead of throwing rocks at each other over stuff.
I really want to ask other questions, but the throwing rock thing, people do throw rocks.
As a kid, that was one of my main solutions to a problem, is throw a rock at it.
I
didn't do well for me, but I would throw the rock anyway.
I will say that it was an enlightening moment for me when I stopped at a car wreck one day and helped the grandmother and two grandchildren. And I had my friend Dave with me, and I absolutely got sideswiped at a wreck. I was the lead, and I was doing all the triage stuff and waiting on the ambulance to get there. And I had somebody come up and address me about my radio show on the spot. And Dave turned around, looked at me, and he said, "Who in the heck was that?" And I said, "Well, it was one of my," and he goes, "What was that about?" And I said, "Well, it was about my radio show." And he goes, "Holy crap, they didn't talk to you about real estate. They wanted to talk to you about your radio show, and they talk to you like that." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Why are you doing your radio show?" I said, "Because there's going to be a time where it's going to be okay. They're going to get to the other side of where they're at." And it has. It's turned that corner. So I love the fact that we talk about throwing stones, because people do throw stones. But sometimes you have to be strong enough to endure them and not maybe fight back. That maybe fight back with just continuing down the path that you're on.
Throwing the stone back from the other side continues the conflict.
Yeah.
Doing something different other than throwing the stone is what makes the difference. And I'm sure with that person, you had some give and take with them.
Sure.
And, as opposed to letting them walk away angry and wanting to do more. We all have different opinions, but they can mesh. It's possible that they can mesh. And again, that's what the station keeps trying to do.
What have you seen out of the station as a whole, as far as the growth and the attention that it's drawing now into the community? What have you seen there?
I know if you wear your radio station shirt to any one of the retail outlets, people will come up and talk to you and want to know how things are going at the station and offer their comments and stuff. But just, a few years ago, that didn't happen. So we know that the impact is there. And we go to chamber functions, and when people say our name, the people there clap and cheer. So good stuff going on with where we fit in the community.
So the listening audience right now, if you could type in what the radio station means to you, I'll read it live on the air. But while you're doing that, give the information again if somebody wants to donate any type of funds to the station for the lightning strike repair.
KDWradio.com. It's KDWradio.com, and it's click the donate button. It takes you to our PayPal thing. And PayPal's not taking a fee for the next 30 days.
And all the money now, because of PayPal doing that, comes directly to us, right?
Right. You give us $10, we get $10, not $9.60-something.
So we did something, or I did something several months back, and I almost thought about doing it today, but I didn't set it up like I did before. But it was kind of amazing to you, and it wasn't to me because I didn't think about it. But I actually did a phone call in, and I actually had people calling in. And when I came in, you said, "Well, John, that doesn't happen anymore." I didn't understand that at the time because when I grew up, I know.
I'm glad you didn't.
It's funny because when I grew up, we're always waiting on the phone to ring.
Right.
Or hey, I'm going to dial because I'm going to be on the radio.
Right.
I thought that kind of went away, but
it kind of moved into the Facebook realm, where people can just type a text and away they go with it. But the phones have been ringing here. People have been calling up. And let me say this: a number of people have called and said, "How can I come in and help?" That's tough for us right now because we don't know the extent of the damage. And we don't know how much work we're going to have to do to get it in. But once that happens, I'll put the call out and say, yeah, we can use some physical labor and some other things to help us with it. But for the moment, donations are really what we need so we can buy the equipment we have to get.
So I'm going to throw this out there too. What do we do here at the station for events for nonprofit organizations? Do we promote those if they give us information?
Everything from giving you a show, come on John's show, come on Rich's show, come on Marie's show, and talk about your nonprofit and what you do, and then major giving campaigns. You've noticed we back off from the giving call, and we focus that call on the nonprofits who need that help. That's our job. Our job isn't to get on the radio and ask for money for us. Our job was to get Care on and Valerie's house and a lot of places that never had any real knowledge. People didn't know they even existed. And we put them on the air and they get donations. And that's our job when it comes to those things.
So I want to take a couple of minutes because I want to throw it at you. And this is really a good softball question for you.
Well, good. I like softball.
I know this is easy because I could actually do it. But I want you to talk about Marie and the value that she's brought during the COVID, I want to call it the COVID transition, because we are now using StreamYard, we're doing different things, but she's been an asset for me when I'm traveling, but also to the station when it comes to the charity giving days that we have. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Marie has run both of those major functions herself. She'll come in and she'll sit for 6 or 7 hours and manage the whole process. She'll spend hours and weeks prior to it organizing everything. But Marie is a great teacher. She has taught me a lot. We were just talking this morning and I had sent out a letter and she said, "You finally got it. You finally learned how to do the ask." I said, "Yeah, you taught me how to do that. If it wasn't for you, Marie, I would have worded it differently, and instead it was like, look, I need your money. Can't do it without you." So, and she has taught me a lot about giving and foundations and the grant writing that I'm doing now that I'm getting reasonably successful with. A lot of that comes from me being able to go to Marie and say, what about this? What about that? What are they looking for? She's got all that information down. She's been a great fundraiser for a lot of organizations in the area. So.
And that camaraderie that she has built with all of those different organizations, doesn't that add something into the flavor of the station?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, our connection with the nonprofit community, we have a huge nonprofit community in Northport, much, much bigger than most cities, where there's all these organizations that are out there doing very specific jobs, Backpack Angels, Valerie's House, Parrot Rescue. I mean, there's just a lot of small organizations that need that exposure to be able to do what they're doing.
And we do give back during those times, right?
We always do that. One of the goals that Brian had set for us was that we should be able to make enough money as a station. We never actually accomplished this, but we should be able to make enough money as a station through sponsorships and keeping our costs to a minimum, which we're always doing that, trying to keep our costs to a minimum, to be able to take the excess and support other members of the community. So when we bring, during the donating weeks, when we bring somebody in, we make sure we've got $100 to give them to prime the pump and to show our listeners, look, we can do it, you can do it.
And you know, setting the goal for somebody a lot of times. Now, I listened to a couple of motivational speakers this morning. I love to just kind of get my mind going when I feel like I need that moment. Is to listen to some motivational speaking, and it's to have someone help you get your mind corrected. And I'm not saying everybody's mind needs corrected, so don't take that out of context. But every one of us needs a moment every once in a while where we just get redirected. And
that's what a coach is all about.
Yeah.
There's coaches in health, there's coaches in sport, there's coaches in cooking, because you got somebody on the outside looking in and seeing things that you don't see and giving you some advice about how to do it a little differently, and maybe you can up your game a little bit. And so that's what that's all about. When you do something like that, you know, you're coaching the giving public to say, give to this charity.
4 years ago, Denzel Washington gave a speech. And everyone out there listening right now should go on YouTube and listen to that speech. It was direct, it was simple and clean, but it was mind-changing. And here's what I mean by that. And it's sort of like what's happening today. We're sitting here talking about something that's really positive in our lives. The radio station is very positive in my life. It can be in the way sometimes. But guess what we all do? We make that adjustment and we get our mind right and we readjust and we go do our show. That speech by itself enlightened a whole group of people when he gave it. Changed the moment. Why don't we all just take a minute, step back on a Monday, change our week? Let's all take a moment and remember that if you help someone and you pay it forward and you do something with kindness and not by taking, that you can really change your momentum. You can change your life. You can move things around.
Even just physically, John, when you do something nice for somebody, even when you say good morning to somebody or you're nice to the girl at the checkout counter, whatever, you create these endorphins in your body that lower your blood pressure, lower your insulin resistance, and it just makes you feel good. And so I think that should be an important part of your life. Do something nice. But Bud Buckley, every show at the end of Wednesday night, every Wednesday night, he says to everybody, and just be nice. It's the best advice I've ever heard. Just be nice.
You know, how many shows do you think we talked about in an hour here?
Quite a few.
I don't know that I think maybe we set the standard now.
Well, there's 46 shows,
yeah.
So I can't remember them all.
I know, and we didn't have the board or the door open, so you couldn't read the board and cheat.
Right.
But you've thrown a lot of shows, a lot of show hosts out there. If they want to see who they are, where should they go?
Go to the website and look at the show hosts. We've got one show host. I'm so proud of her. She's in her late 80s, Barbara Carley. And she has the worst case of rheumatoid arthritis you can ever imagine, to the point where she can barely move. She has been doing a show every week for 23 minutes for 4 or 5 years. So, and it ain't the greatest show on the planet, but here she is. She's getting up and she's doing it.
But go back. How long?
4 or 5 years now.
And how old?
She's in her 80s, going into her 90s now.
Dude, you know, if I make it that long, I'm gonna feel good about it.
Yeah, me too.
You know, I'm 59, so I got what, 29 years to go.
Yeah, you could do it, John.
I think I can. I feel 29, but we almost have to be off the air because it's 3:58 right now.
Okay.
And I know you're gonna get up and turn me off over here on the radio station.
I'm heading out.
All right. So once again, this is John Rawlings with RJ Malloy at WKDW Radio 97.5 FM saying thanks. Have a blessed day. Please open your hearts and a little bit of your wallet. Send in some donations to help us out. I promise I'm not going to beg, plead, or anything else. But help somebody out, and you can help us out to move our station forward so we can continue to bring great information and great content and great music your way. This is John Rawlings with WKDW Radio saying thanks and have a good night. Bye-bye.